Welcome to All Bodies on Bikes, the podcast, where all bodies are good bodies, all bikes are good bikes, and all rides are celebrated.
All Bodies on Bikes is a movement to create and foster a radically inclusive bike community. So join your hosts, I'm Ellen.
And I'm Marley.
As we explore the complexities of the biking world. Help us break down barriers and create the world that we want to see.
And don't forget that all bodies really means all bodies, not just larger bodies, but bodies of all sizes,
Ages,
races,
abilities,
genders,
sexualities,
and beyond. Come along for the ride.
Hi friends, Marley Blonsky here, Executive Director of All Bodies on Bikes and your podcast co-host. I've got some really exciting news for you. Our fall fundraiser for All Bodies on Bikes is officially live and we need your help. We're trying to raise $10,000 to keep growing this incredible community, making cycling accessible to everyone, no matter their size, shape, or experience level. Your support today will help us fund more inclusive events, offer more resources, and spread the message that all bodies truly belong on bikes. And as a special thank you, anyone who donates over $50 will get our custom All Bodies on Bikes X Gooder sunglasses, which are really fun. They're named the hottest thing on two wheels. Trust me, you don't want to miss out on these incredible sunglasses. So head on over to allbodiesonbikes.com to donate and please share with your friends. Let's ride together and make this movement bigger and better than ever.
Oh, hello, Ellen.
Hi, Marley. How are you?
What time it is? I'm good. How are you?
No. What time is it?
It's time for the All Bodies on Bikes podcast.
What's my favorite time of day?
Mine too. Mine too.
Good. I'm glad. I'm really glad we can edit things because I'm already sitting here. I don't know what to say next.
Let's just bring our guest on. Today, we are talking with Amanda Carey, who is the National NICA President. So let me tell you all about her, and then we will have an awesome conversation. So Amanda Carey has been the NICA President since November 2021. Amanda became involved with NICA in 2015 when she started her local Teton Valley composite team as part of the Idaho League. In 2017, Amanda joined the NICA National Coach Education Team, bringing with her a deep passion and commitment to NICA's core values of fun, inclusivity, equity, respect, and to make mountain biking accessible to riders of all ages. Amanda has a BA in political science from Colorado College and a master's in sports psychology from Capella University. My brain wants to say acapella, but it's Capella. Prior to her time at NICA, Amanda held multiple positions in nonprofit organizations, including time as both a development director and an executive director with different cycling and trail advocacy organizations. Amanda also brings with her many years as a professional mountain bike and cyclocross racer, having won the National Ultra Endurance Series, Breck Epic, Transylvania Epic, and Iceman Cometh races multiple times. Amanda lives with her husband, Nate, in Victor, Idaho, where they love to mountain bike, ski, and adventure out in the mountains with their two dogs. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Oh, thank you. And I'm really glad to be here. It's good to see you.
Let's back up for a minute. I just said I was coaching, but what in the heck is NICA?
NICA, gosh, yeah, it's not a household name, which is why I love talking about it, right? NICA is the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. We are a mission-based nonprofit that runs interscholastic, so team-based mountain biking programs for riders in 6th to 12th grade all across the country, right? So right now we have about 25,000 riders and 15,000 volunteer coaches across the United States. And we do this through community-based, which I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about today, community-based and wonderful volunteers like yourself. It's a community-driven program. It's been around since 2009, and we have we've almost hit nearly 100,000 riders that have graduated from the NICA program since we started back in the day. Hard to believe, but yeah, that's NICA in a nutshell.
That's so
incredible.
Cool.
Those numbers are so impressive.
I showed up to my first practice the other day and there was nearly 40 kids, 40 students. And I was just like, holy cow, no wonder you need more coaches because these students are so enthusiastic and so excited. And they just accepted me with open arms and said, okay, Coach Marley, where are we riding today? I was like, I'm not in charge. I'm just sweeping.
So isn't it funny too? And I'm sure we'll talk about this as a coach standing in front of 40 kids, 20 kids, 100 kids saying, what are we going to do today? Can be equally parts empowering and terrifying too, which is why I'm sure we'll talk about our coach education and how we work as a community. But yeah, that first experience must have been I hope both equal parts. Oh gosh, here we go. Because it's
Yes, and
there's
also really cool. Like these kids and these parents are trusting in me and we're gonna have a good time, and we have. So it's been awesome.
How does mountain biking work as a team sport?
Yeah, it's interesting. What NICA does so well is we take kiddos at an age where being part of a team, being with friends is so important, right? What's unique about NICA is we have turned an individual sport into a team-based sport, which is really what gets kids engaged and empowered and getting that team-based experience, which sports is just so famous for and so great for. So in the team format, essentially, in team practices, but really where it shows up is as at our events and at our races, right? So every rider is in their own race and they essentially score points, right? So your varsity, your JV, your freshman, middle school riders, they go out and on the day, they give it their best and they're showing up to be their best. And essentially, no matter how many kids are participating, everyone scores points towards that team overall. And I'll tell you, very few actually focus on this, but that's the whole element of what the team base is all about. You're not just riding on your own. And I think back in the day when NICA was founded, that was the idea with the founders, right? It's back in California when this started. It actually started from a high school math teacher wanted to start a road team. And Matt got all the flyers together, invited a bunch of kids, and they all showed up and said, actually, can we make this a mountain bike team? Because it's way cooler than road. Essentially, what they were doing was just trying to form a club. But what they also found was that as part of that experience, and I'm sure a lot of kids get this too until they enter NICA, is they were just showing up at events made for adults, right? And that's a very different experience, especially for a kid. So I think NICA grew out of that desire, right? It was to create an experience for kids that was not only unique, that was meeting their needs at the time of adolescence where you just want to be with your friends. You want to be doing something cool with great coaches, great mentors. And so we are trying to make mountain biking like joining the volleyball team or the basketball team and getting that team experience while also getting to show up on the day and really engage in the individual sport, but as a team.
What drew you to NICA and what does being president mean to you, both personally and professionally?
Gosh, so much. A great question. And it was funny, I was thinking about this the other day, because it's coming on my third anniversary of being president. And I remember having this conversation with my dad and saying, I just don't even understand how I ended up here. And he just looked at me. He was like, kiddo, your entire life has led you here. Are you kidding me? And it was a little bit of this aha moment where I've always operated this way in my personal and professional meld, because it's hard for me to do anything professionally if I'm not personally interested in it. Because my whole ethos is I'm going to work myself into the ground for causes that I believe in. And so this is the sixth nonprofit that I've worked for since I was 16. But really what I think NICA has done for me on both a personal and professional level is that I can take a ton of personal interest. I love mountain biking. I love the outdoors. I love kids, even though we don't have our own. We joke when my husband and I were running the team that we started, we had 80 children, right? But they weren't our own, right? My involvement in NICA then and my involvement in NICA now is really just this culmination of everything that I've done with just it blends my leadership. It blends past experience with nonprofit cycling advocacy organizations. And it was just this, I don't know, this just beautiful moment back in 2015 when I learned about NICA. I think that day I went home and maybe voluntold my husband, we're doing this. Not a, do you want to do this? It's, we are doing this because he's a 20-year ski instructor, comes from the bike industry background as well too. He runs an adaptive sports organization, a nonprofit himself too. But we just synced up on this. He was feeling burnt out on mountain biking and so was I, but it was just this, I think it was mostly hope, right? It was this hope of let's work with not only the next generation, but let's make it into what we want it to be, what we want it to become. And that's what I get to do as president every day. And I know that it's, it is just mountain biking, but I think for the 40,000, I hope soon hundreds of thousands of people that will find, the joy and the community and the acceptance and the welcoming of our community. That's what I get to do every day.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that.
I think that's really important though to note that it's like there's a reason that you're here and that it's future looking. Is the other thing that I heard, and that it's like driving so much purpose. So can you talk a little bit about some of the key challenges that you're facing as you try to expand the reach and like work with any underserved communities?
Sure. Gosh, challenges are many. And I don't mean to say NICA is unique in this because it's the old story, not enough resources, too much need. But I do think at this point, we have many challenges, but I think looking into the future, probably our biggest challenges is going to be places to ride. And I meld that with our efforts to be inclusive, our efforts to be equitable, to meet people where they're at and invite them to ride. Trail infrastructure and where trails exist is a huge part of this. And I'd be remiss if I didn't note that we are one of the largest trail users as an organized body in the United States. And we take that really seriously, right? We focus a lot on trail advocacy and being polite and having good trail etiquette behavior and things like that too. But the biggest limiter to our growth right now that I see is that equitable access, right? And I'm not talking about someone who can afford a bike or not a bike. That is a separate and additional problem. It's access, it's a bike, it's a place to ride, it's parents with leisure time to drive you to the trailhead. They can afford a bike rack, things like that too. We know that those things are stacking and stacking. And the easiest thing for us to address, quite frankly, is actually the equipment, right? The equipment is funding. The harder thing for us is getting participation closer to where teams exist, right? And closer to home. We have many teams right now that are doing the very best with what they have, which is not very close access to trails. And we have part of our 101 curriculum where we teach, and I don't know, Marley, if you've hit this point in your coach training yet, but we actually have, as part of our curriculum, we teach coaches how to set up a mountain bike course, but in a grass field, right? And how to teach, and we call it the short course, right? So we actually teach biking and tons of games, and we have bike soccer and bike limbo. We have endless ways to meet the need of basically setting up a practice where you don't have trails. But that, as I see, is one of the biggest limiters. And underserved communities are underserved in so many ways. But when you see the biggest barriers to participation right now, that is one of the biggest ones. And I always tell folk, what's the holy grail of what you would have to have unlimited participation opportunity? And that's trails right out the back door of the school, right? So I equate that oftentimes with, think of baseball, basketball, all these other things. You've got your public school has built the field, they maintain it, they actually reserve it you, right? So if you're playing volleyball, you're not going to get 40 other volleyball players coming in and playing volleyball on your court too, right? So we also have those challenges of sharing the trails that we do have. So it is unique, but I do think that collectively what we need to do at NICA is not only be better advocates for our needs, but it's get more involved. Those places to ride need to be in communities where we don't already have access.
Yeah, something that is opening the door to more kids versus improving the existing doors that the kids who are participating could already get to.
Yep, absolutely.
It's a really interesting point about like all of the other curricular activities exist in schools in one way or the other. I don't know that it feels a little bit like it's publicly funded. It's acknowledged that this is a way that your kid would want to participate in a sport, participate in some kind of after school activity. So therefore build it, and they like build it so they can use it. So I think that's just such an interesting connection to draw. It's like bikes are something that's going to be accessible to you throughout your entire life, but they're not given, like the access is what you're saying is not there easily and at such a young age. So without like purposeful action in your family's life or your own life, it's not something that you're going to do without this kind of access. It's really interesting. What were you going to say, Marley?
Oh, I was going to say I hadn't thought about it from that perspective of the schools building and reserving, especially. That's a challenge we run into in Bentonville all the time. And I should not be complaining at all because we literally do have mountain bike trails coming out the back of schools. It's incredible. But we do run into the challenge of crowded trails and shared access and making sure that we are riding with respect and keeping our wheels on the ground, because a lot of the kids around here ride every single day, even if they're not at a NICA practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I always know when I'm out and I'm riding on a trail and I run into a NICA kid or a NICA family. It is so apparent to me, the behavior, because I think, and we don't get it all right all of the time, right? But the conscientiousness, the courteousness, the pulling over to the side, looking you in the eye, smiling and say thank you is way different than most of the experiences that I have with people who aren't involved in it. How we behave on trails and how we treat each other is one of the biggest determinants of whether we continue to get access to that trail or we get future access. I think it's one of the most unknown things about mountain biking in general, but the land manager or anyone who owns a private land is opening their trails to users and they start getting complaints. Gosh, it's like, why would we reward bad behavior is a little bit of the mentality that I've seen. And so we do ourselves a service. And quite frankly, it's more fun right? to smile and say thank you and to be courteous and share the trail. But that is not going to go away as part of being a mountain biker and a trail user. And being courteous and having good etiquette is a really big part of what we do and what we teach, and then those expectations of how we interact on the trail.
Yeah, that's been one of the biggest surprises to me as I've gone through the coach education is very little, at least of the initial curriculum. I guess backing up. So when you sign on to be a coach, there is a fully built out curriculum. There's kind of three levels of coaches and ascending levels of responsibilities and roles within the team that come with those additional learnings. But at least for the level one, very little of it is focused on the actual on the bike coaching. It's more about what is the purpose of NICA? It's to build good character through cycling, through these kids or in these kids. And I've just been really impressed by that. Can you talk a little bit about the philosophy behind NICA and the coaching? And yeah, why do you guys do it the way you do it?
It's funny. I feel like that's the way it should be in all youth coaching, right? And I think if I can encapsulate how we recruit and retain coaches, I often try and remind folks that to be a great mountain biking coach, let's just take out the mountain biking. Let's just talk about what it means to be a good coach. And I think a lot of educators know this, but are you kind? Are you fun? Are you patient? Are you a good listener? Are you going to show up and be able to put whatever it is going on in your life aside, or your workout or your ride or whatever it is, and show up for these kids in the way on a daily basis that they need you to show up, right? And most of that is just being a great person to hang out with, right? And being a good mentor. And again, I'm glossing over the fact that yes, character development is at the core of what we do. It's the most important thing that we do. And we mostly describe ourselves, I think, as a youth development organization. We're not a youth mountain biking organization, right? We just so happen to think that, at least I think, the mountain bike is the best tool possible to teach character development and to do youth development. And so our coaching philosophy really is grounded in human first, right? We are here to make cyclists for life, good humans for life. And we just do that through mountain biking. And so, yeah, the progression of our coach education is so squarely focused on what is your coach philosophy. If we make it easy, we don't even make you come up with your own core values, right? Our values are fun, inclusive, equitable, respect, and community, right? And having core values at the center of coach ed, everything comes out from there, right? So we don't need to actually be that prescriptive with until later on in your coaching journey with here are your practice plans and here's how you teach level pedals and here's how you manage a group of 10. It's about how you approach it. Because at the end of the day, kids remember how you treated them, not exactly what you said, right? It's that old saying is you remember how people made you feel, not what you said. And to be a great coach, that's really what's fundamental. And I don't think, Marley, when you were at our national conference, you had the opportunity to listen to John O'Sullivan speak, but
I didn't know.
yeah, I would put him on anyone's radar. He is our grand master of all things character development. And he always puts us through this exercise. We do it through a lot of coach education workshops as well, too, where we have people write down the 5 best qualities of the best coach or the best teacher you ever had, right? And so you write down all these qualities and you stick them on the wall and you see the difference. And about 90% of the stuff usually is character. They were fun. They held me accountable. They were compassionate. They were great leaders. And very little of it actually is the technical and the tactical, right? They taught me how to shoot a foul shot. Okay, that's important too, right? But that really is at the core of what we're trying to do, right? It's great humans for life. And everything in our coach education is based in that approach to youth development. But then I think it's also self-sustaining in the culture that we create and the expectations that we have. And I think when we get the random coach or the random parent here or there that is not coaching to our core values, they stick out like a sore thumb. It's pretty apparent. And they also get the opportunity, which is one of the most undersold parts of NICA, I think, is that we do just as much, if not more, for the adults that participate in our programs than we do the kids, believe it or not. And I've seen it. Because again, I was a level 3 coach and I was a head coach for many years. Again, my background is in coach ed and sports psych. And I think that this idea that you're showing up in service of kids, you end up showing up in service of yourself. And then it just becomes this, I don't know, Marley, you're probably just starting it, but it's just this super cool, it's like a co-learning opportunity, right? And it just becomes this thing where you're working on yourself just alongside, as much as the kids are alongside them.
Yeah,
And
it's got to like provide this opportunity for self-reflection, right? Of like catching yourself when you are about to be mean instead of kind, when you're about to say, if you're about to coach in a way that's in anger and that's not part of the core, it's that gut check is a big part of changing your behavior. So it's really cool. It's like Ted Lasso for kids on bikes.
100%.
gosh,
Yeah.
Yeah, we need a podcast on that. I hope what we teach coaches to model just as much to their student athletes for themselves is that failure is expected. It's okay. Because if you hit a rock and you fall over, you just got to get back up and keep trying, right? And I think that's just the beauty of mountain biking is it's such a quick, rapid sport. And I always tell kids that every single pedal stroke is a new opportunity for you to do something new and better and different. And coaches, gosh, I don't want to say I used to crash all the time, but when I crash in front of the kids or fall over, yeah, I'm human, not only human too, I'm learning alongside with you. Like I didn't know how to do a wheelie or a track stand before I started coaching NICA. The kids taught me how to do it. It's this whole philosophy that we are all working on our character together. We're all working on being better mountain bikers in general. There's no end point there. I think in a way that is an untold story in NICA for sure.
I like that so much. And I think it's just something that it's creating a foundation for these kids in a lot of different ways. It sounds like the surface level that you might think of with NICA is that it's about bikes, but the deeper level is actually that it's about building the character and how are you building so many other strengths. It just so happens that the medium is mountain biking. And how do you think that this is also helping youth develop physically or even mentally wise?
Yeah. Gosh, kids need movement, period. I'm not saying mountain biking has a monopoly on this. They need fun. They need so many things that a bike can provide to them depending on their development stage. And I think I've already explained before what I think NICA does really well at that 6th to 12th grade age is we put them together with their friends and their team. But the thing, remember what a bike was for all of us who rode bikes as kids, bike was your freedom, right? And again, it's that tool that you can use no matter what for what goal you have. And I think for kids especially, it's teaching them that they can, what I've seen at least, that they can do hard things, right? And that is such an invaluable lesson, especially, I think, especially for young girls at the age that we get them in NICA, but teaching them that mountain biking is not easy and that's okay. It's the pursuit of something hard, it's something difficult. And even teaching them through for the mental health connection, but also the physical connection is teaching them really that they have the power to shape their own experience. And that's often new for kids, right? As you can teach them through the bike, right? It's raining. Okay, you could say it's just water, right? You're just going to get wet, or you can just be so upset about it. So in it's teaching them that they have a choice and they can make that choice about whether what they are experiencing is going to be positive or it's going to be negative. And we don't get it all right all the time. A number of kiddos I've seen throw their bike over in frustration, and adults too. I've seen it often, not so much in NICA, but in my pro racing career. It just, I think for kids especially, it's all of those things together, but in every developmental stage that they can understand spatial awareness, relationship to their body. They're learning. I think the most important thing for kids is learning about what their body can do. It's just not what it looks like. And that's also a big thing for kids, and especially for our young girls. It's how hard you pedal, it's how hard you try, it's effort that you put in. There's no better sport or machine than a bicycle. It's going to give you that immediate input back of you did it right or you have something to improve on there.
Yeah, definitely. So NICA doesn't exist in a vacuum, obviously. It exists within communities and within schools. Can you talk a little bit about how NICA works with schools or like local bike shops or other orgs to create cycling programs that are both sustainable and community driven? Can you talk about that community aspect a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I often describe NICA as like these little ecosystems, and it's all centered on the NICA team. So I think what NICA does really well is that we empower amazing volunteers like you, Marley, or these super volunteers that are our head coaches. And these little ecosystems are based around teams, right? So the team, they need a local bike shop to help them because not all coaches are mechanics. So they need that local bike shop to help them with purchases, with equipment, with fixing, with asking questions. And they need parent volunteers to shuttle kids back and forth to practice or to volunteer at races or to create the meals or all those things. So the community process, everything in NICA is really set up to empower that local team. People think, I got a coach and I don't have time for coaching, right? There's a lot of different ways to support, and there's a lot of different ways that teams need support to be the self-sustaining communities. With local bike shops, with parent volunteers, with anybody, there is a place and there is a role that's really important that everyone kind of pulls some weight within that community as well too. So we are setting up really just amazing volunteers with the tools to do something at an easier level, right? So we take care of the education, the insurance, the places to ride, the structure, and all those things. And what we try to do is let everybody focus on, and I'm not saying it's easy, but everyone focus on just that team experience, the practice experience, right, too. So with the community base and making sure that it's sustainable, every single team is run a little bit differently, and that's for good reason. We have really two types of teams in NICA. We have a school-based team and we have a composite team. So school-based is you have all the student athletes that are participating from just the same school. And then the composite teams are kind of a hodgepodge mix of, it could be private schools, homeschool, public school, middle school, and high school. The composite team I used to run with my husband, we had private, public, and homeschool kids from 7 different locations and counties.
Wow.
So really what we try to do is set the model up to be really flexible, but then supportive of what that local community needs. And so it's community driven and sustainable in the sense where we're strict with what we need to be strict. And there's usually risk management, coach ed, and things like that too. But mostly we're trying to support the very best of what we can, these little tiny ecosystems that pop up in these communities in which everyone needs to play a role. What sets NICA apart with parent involvement is that parents are not on the sidelines of our organization. Again, I'm not a parent, but I've seen it's almost 80% of our coaches are parents. So then becomes this unique thing where parents and kids are doing this together. And they're not only doing it together, parents are invited into our community in a different way that they are not in other sports, right? I'm picturing the coach with the, the shorts and the whistle and the clipboard.
My husband was a T-ball coach. He bought himself a whistle.
I don't need a whistle. I just yell. But it's very much the parents are on the sidelines, right? It's that we don't need you. But what we need you to do is, I don't know, bring some orange slices after practice, and that's when you're placed. And we not only invite parents in, we need parents for volunteer spots, to help at races, to be course marshals, to be parking attendants and things like that too. And so I think this whole idea of being community driven and sustainable is that intentional invitation. It's, no, we need you here. Please come in. You're not on the sidelines. And so in terms of sustainability, I think that's one of the best parts of our program, is that you don't have parents or anyone tiptoeing around. Everyone is all in, hands on deck, willing to help, because I think it is that difference of invitation. If you ever go to a NICA race, you'll see it takes usually a solid day or two to set up a course. Sometimes it takes a half an hour to break it down. Because what you will see is when the varsity or whatever the last race of the day is, you just get hundreds of kids and parents just descending on the course and everything and ripping it all down and packaging it up. Because again, it's that invitation, and I think it's sustainable in that way because everyone plays a role and they want to help.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I wrote intentional invitation down because that's, I think, important in all of this community building.
Yeah. And I think that tees us up nicely for our last question. This time absolutely flew by, but I'm hoping you take it and run with it. But how can listeners support NICA's mission and get involved in youth cycling?
So many ways. Anything that you've heard today is that there's a lot of different ways to help. But number one, I'll tell you, and I think we opened with this, is spread the word. I think that observation is not a lot of folks know about NICA. And I've seen that. And I don't know, if you're a cyclist, you probably are aware. And if you're a mountain biker, you're definitely aware. But outside of our little bubble, that's what I want people to know of, right? Is we are, okay, I'll say I think we're better, but that's just my job to say that we're better. But I do
You can say it.
I could say it. There's a story to be told about NICA outside of NICA that I don't think is being told, which is we're changing youth sports, and we're changing youth sports for the better. And we are our inclusive nature. There's no cuts, there's no bench, there's no tryouts. Parents are invited in, coaches are volunteers, focus on character development. The way that NICA is doing youth sports, I think, is what I want the world to hear. That's why I think we have the goal. In 10 years, we're hoping to be 100,000 student athletes across the world, hopefully. But I think that's the first most important thing, is that it's not just about mountain biking. It's how we do youth sports. And I've had so many parents over the years say, no knock on soccer, but gosh, I don't get to go camping for the weekend and ride my bike and sit around campfires and feel invited and watch my kid thrive in a way that I do in NICA, right? The youth sports model in the United States, the older you get in the United States, the better you are expected to be at the sport to get the right to play. And I've said this a million times, where kids should just get to play because they want to. That's it, full stop. It's challenging, but I think what our model shows that others can do is that is the value in and of itself. If a kid wants to play, they get to play. If they want to race, they can. If they don't want to race, they don't have to. And putting that emphasis on participation and effort, not outcomes and race results. And we have no competitive aspirations or elite development in our organization. But so many kids get there, but it's because we're focusing on the right thing. We're including them for longer. So that's the first most important.
Yeah.
Then there's also volunteering at a local race. We are always seeking donations. I always tell folks that NICA is we are significantly fundraised, right? It's really important to us because mountain biking is a more expensive sport for all the reasons we've talked about. There's equipment, there's trail access, there's all these things. We really rely on donations and partnerships, especially from the cycling industry, to keep the cost of registration, the cost of doing business low. But volunteer as a coach, check it out. There's so many different ways, but I would say if you want to learn more about NICA, we've got a great website. It's nationalmtb.org. There's lots of different ways, but mostly just ask. There's going to be a role for you. Trust me. If you want to get involved in this awesome organization, again, like I said, we've got 15,000 coaches, 25,000 student athletes. So you can do the math. That's almost a 2-to-1 ratio. Because as Marley said, we always need more coaches. And if you don't think you can be a coach, you probably definitely can be a coach, because then you're doing that introspection that I think is expected of a coach.
Oh,
Yeah.
sneaky. I won't lie. It's intimidating to go out there and know that some of the students on my team are much better riders than I am. Thankfully, like, we split up into groups, and I usually go with the mild or the medium group. We have mild, medium, and spicy is how we split it up. It's really fun. And I usually get to go with the mild group, and it works out great. But yeah, if you're hesitant, that's a sign to do it.
I think so. I think you're asking yourselves the right question. And again, it tells you anything. I used to be a pro mountain bike racer and a skills instructor, and I showed up, and it's intimidating to have 40 kids look at you. But I think at the same time, going into any kind of coaching, knowing that you're learning alongside with the kids I think that's the best mentality to go into. And I always give coaches the best advice is that this is not my quote, I'm stealing it probably from John O'Sullivan, but you might not be the coach for everybody, but you're the coach for somebody. Man, when you connect with a kiddo, there really is nothing like it, because they're not going to connect with everybody, but you absolutely could be the coach for somebody.
Well, you described all kinds of ways that you're going to coach the coaches, as much like to be a coach, as much as you'll coach the coaches to ride bikes and support kids on bikes. So I think it sounds like you've got such a strong setup here at NICA to really set this foundation for kids, coaches, everybody who is interested and who wants to come along. Like, I think I was trying to count the ways to like have this really smart wrap up of all the ways that you've mentioned that NICA supports kids. And I lost count. I think you had to have easily named 24 ways that you are thoughtfully taking on this role in kids' lives. And it just happens to be through bike. I appreciate that you were here. Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And again, I'd encourage anyone who wants to learn more, check us out, and just thank you, because I didn't even get to ask you any questions. You had me do it. But if NICA ever starts a podcast, maybe you'll be my first introduction, because I will tell you, Marta was a guest speaker at our national conference this year and gave a keynote that I think in the surveys that we get was one of the highest ranked keynotes that we've ever had.
Wow.
And I feel like we're finally getting traction. This traction of inclusivity is not simple, right? Inclusivity takes time and constant effort and constant reimagining and re-questioning of the way and how we are doing things, so that we can do things better to be more inclusive. And it's not just, can you include the kid that doesn't want to race? It's much, much bigger than that. And I think that the message that you gave our folks, it was not only a slam dunk, you had everyone in that room thinking about inclusivity in a way that we've not thought about it. Because again, inclusivity has I struggle with it sometimes. As a private organization, we have our core values, and they're our core values. So we get to define them, and we get to say what inclusivity means to us. But I also think that if we aren't constantly asking other people, do you feel included, then we're not doing the right work. And it's not about how we think we are doing, it's the impact that we are having on others. And if we don't constantly ask, and if we don't constantly question, we're never going to get it right. And NICA has a long way to go with truly being inclusive, but you put us on a really strong path for learning even more about it.
Oh, they'll be happy to hear that I'm now a coach. Thank you. And thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, it was really fun. Let's do it again sometime.
Agreed. Bye.
Thanks, Amanda.